Hello everyone, this is Sarah Spencer, and today I'm going to talk to you about the men who appear to be a bit incompetent when it comes to domestic work and how it is screwing over women every day. Women and girls are responsible for more than 75% of unpaid care work in the world. In the United States, women spend an average of 4 hours every single day doing unpaid work, whereas men only spend about an average of 2 hours every day. Even when a woman has a full-time career, she is still roughly 6 times more likely than her male partner to be responsible for the majority of household tasks. In general, working women are 10 times more likely to be the primary child care provider. It is fair to believe that this situation stems from traditional gender roles, where women are responsible for all domestic chores and unpaid labor, like cooking meals, grocery shopping, and taking care of the children. But in such a modern era of life, why are women really still left to do so much of this unpaid work? Well, sadly, I think we can attribute a lot of this to weaponized incompetence. Weaponized incompetence is essentially the way that men act unable to perform certain tasks in order to have a woman complete it or walk them through it. Here's a quick little anecdote to serve as an example. I remember one day as a child, I was eating dinner with my family, and my mom had spent hours cooking this intricate homemade meal that we call cheesy shells. After we ate, my mom asked my dad if he could do the dishes because she was so tired of being on her feet all day cooking for us. My dad looked annoyed, but he agreed. He then walked over to the sink and dishwasher area and attempted to put in the largest pan on the small top rack of the dishwasher. It obviously didn't fit. My mom and I laughed at him. He then said, "Carolyn, I have no idea how to do this. I don't even know how to start this dishwasher." She gave in immediately and said in a frustrated tone, "Okay, whatever, I can just do them in the morning." My dad then sat on the couch and watched TV as my mom, sister, and I cleared the table. I didn't really think about it at the time, but there's no way my father was actually that incompetent where he could not do the dishes. He simply just didn't want to. He wanted my mom to do them, and well, she did. This is just one example of weaponized incompetence that led to a mother having to do more unpaid work. I'm sure some of you are listening and thinking of very similar stories with your fathers, brothers, husbands, boyfriends, whomever. Women are victims of weaponized incompetence every day. Now, I've already mentioned that women being responsible for most of the world's unpaid labor comes from traditional gender roles. But let's take that a step further. I believe it's really fair to question that men may default to this weaponized incompetence act due to traditional gender roles as well. Maybe doing the dishes and taking care of children all day makes them feel a little less masculine. Maybe the progressive nature of gender roles being intertwined just makes a lot of men uncomfortable because that isn't the traditional norm in the United States. We'd have to do a lot more research to tackle that exactly, but I think it's something we should ponder about. Anyways, here with me today is Brooke Klaus, a wife and a mother of 3 young children, and I'm going to ask her a bit about how weaponized incompetence and unpaid labor plays a role in her life. Have you experienced any acts of weaponized incompetence with your husband? And if so, could you share one of those experiences?
I would say definitely. I would say the nature of the mother just lends itself to being the one to do all the things. I think that, I don't want this to sound negative, but I think my children are always first in my brain. They're always the first thing that I need to take care of and what needs to be done for them. And I think my husband loves our kids, no question, is the best dad in the world, but just his priorities in his brain are different because he just assumes that I will take care of the kids. Mm-hmm. And so the kids will always be, we have 3 kids. We have a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And though they're pretty self-sufficient at this point, there's, schedules and lunches and uniforms and sports and play dates and birthdays and birthday presents. And I think that is always the laundry list that I'm running through in my head, whereas my husband just takes for granted, if you will, that I will be in charge of all of those things. And then he does not need to. And I think that there are examples on the daily when A, I forget things, or B, I ask him for, help driving to so-and-so's practice, but he didn't even realize, one of the kids had practices, and so we're all shuffling things around. So I think it just is, that is the biggest, difference in what I deal with on a daily basis and what he has to deal with.
Yeah. So would you say that the weaponized incompetence in your household does contribute to you doing more unpaid labor?
Yeah, I think certainly.
Okay. And on a daily basis, about how many hours do you think you spend doing unpaid labor, and what does that generally consist of for you?
Oh my gosh. A lot. I mean, if we really want to start, I mean it's all day, truly, because it's like keeping the house in order, it's making sure the kids get to where they need to be, it's volunteering for the kids at school, which is required by the school, it's making dinner, making all of the food, the laundry, the organizing for the children, it's the emotional labor that I'm working on with the children and raising good people. It's the physical nature of even being up with them in the middle of the night when they have nightmares. So, I mean, it's truly, take out, say, 10 hours of sleeping, 14-hour days.
Yeah. So would you say that you are doing more of the household task and childcare on a daily basis than your husband?
I would say yes. I think naturally I only work part-time, so that definitely has something to do, work outside the home because I am working inside the home as a mother. But career-wise, professionally, I'm only working part-time. My husband works full-time in a professional capacity, so that is a natural division of labor that I would shoulder more of that. I do think in the hours when he's not working, he certainly pitches in and does as much as I do. But I think because of the way that our professional lives are structured, I shoulder more of the burden. And I will say, even outside of those hours that we are both parenting together, I, as the mother and the wife and the mom, shoulder a lot more of the emotional labor, like I was talking to before, just the remembering of the things,
Yeah.
the scheduling, the, emotional weight of always having my children first in my brain and what they need and how we can serve them, even though that's not entirely it, but it kind of is because they take a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned that you do have a part-time career outside of your family. What does that look like?
So I am a writer and editor. I would say it's probably, it's fluctuated over the years, and feel very grateful that I've been able to do that work and also primarily stay home and raise my kids and do all of the work that goes into that. So I've been able to take on projects in between all of when my kids were really little and that. But for right now, it's probably about, I would say 15 to 20 hours a week that I'm working in a professional capacity.
Okay. And after work, do you feel like you ever get to just come home and relax, or do you feel like you are coming home to a second shift, aka cleaning, taking care of kids, and cooking?
Yes, there's definitely always a shift waiting for me. Yeah, there's always work. There's always work to be done in the home and with the kids and in my brain and sorting everyone out and figuring everything out. And my sink currently is piled high with dishes because I was volunteering all morning with my kids at school, and then I was answering emails for work, and the dishes have not yet been done. So, but they're mine to do, and it usually falls on me to do them. So, yes, there's always more work in the home that doesn't get done or that is facing me to be done.
Yeah. Do you feel like the amount of unpaid labor and family obligations have made it hard for you to climb higher, more professionally in your career?
Absolutely, 100%. I remember having a conversation with my mom when I was trying to decide whether or not I was going to go back to work full time when I was pregnant with my first son. So this was 11 years ago. And my mom worked full time outside of the home. She was a teacher, and then she was an administrator, and she ran a school at the end of her career, and she was an educator for 40 years and loved it. And I asked her what she thought about looking back on her career. I also had a career in education before I was a writer and editor, but I was just looking for her advice, and she had said if she had taken time off or decided to stay home, she would not have gotten as far in her career at the end of her career. And that gave me pause to just sort of figure out what I wanted for my career, because, when you take a pause, it's harder to get back in, and you're sort of behind when you start climbing. So I think my choice to take a time out from a full-time career has definitely impacted where I could be here. But at the time, my salary was lower than my husband's, and so it made sense for me to step out of my career to raise our kids when they were little, as opposed to my husband's.
Yeah.
But we were having an interesting conversation, my husband and I, the other day, and he was saying how he has a very hard time turning off work, and how he never could have ever turned work off like I turned work off. And I said to him, well, how am I any different than you? Just because I'm a mom and I'm a wife and I'm a woman, do you think that it made it easier when I was wrestling with who I wanted to be and my identity, like that I had to turn it off? And I was like, I don't think so. I just had to, because
it just made more sense.
It made more sense. And there's this cultural, bias or whatever, that the woman's place is in the house, not the man's. And so that was just sort of the way we went. But it was an interesting conversation.
Do you think that if your husband did more domestic chores and childcare, you would have more time to do other things in your life? Like, not just professionally, but just other things that you enjoy?
Certainly. I would read. I would run. I think, and I think if I asked my husband to do the dishes that are in the sink right now so I could go on a run, if he had the time and space, he absolutely would. Like, if he didn't have a meeting, if he didn't have a professional whatever that he had, he would do it. But even the fact that I have to ask feels like an emotional burden. Yeah. Right? Like, I would love to, and I'm not saying my husband doesn't do this, because he does occasionally, but I would love to have someone that just steps in at all times and sees me and is like, go for a run, go read a book, I'll do the second shift of all this stuff. Yeah. Again, he will gladly do it if I ask, but I don't want to even have that another emotional layer of asking. Yeah, like the way it's in your brain when you see the dishes, to just do them. It doesn't like hit it. Correct. The same for him. 100%. Yeah. So how are you combating weaponized incompetence in your home? I think by remembering to ask, like what we were just talking about. I think not forgetting that I can ask, instead of getting all flustered and not doing enough for me and then feeling slighted. So I think saying, like, this is not okay. Dishes are not a woman's, they're anybody's job. Yeah. Laundry can be anyone's job. Vacuuming can be anyone's job. I am no better at vacuuming than my husband. Zero. I have had zero training in vacuuming. It is the same for everybody. You plug it in, you run it over the rug. So there's no reason why that should naturally be my job. Yeah, exactly. Do you think there's any other changes that you guys could make to have more equitable time and unpaid labor obligations? Yeah, I think yes. And I think when you're in the throes of small children, you don't feel like you have time for anything. But I think conversations that we've had now that our kids are a little bigger, and now that I'm working more because my kids are a little bigger, is really coming up with a plan of, this person can do this laundry on this day, and this person can help out with the dishes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and this person can help, more with chores on this day, and this person can do X, Y, Z, so it doesn't naturally fall to the mom. Because that's where really it naturally falls to, because of all of these things we're just talking about. It becomes the mom's burden. But I think, having a clear set idea of responsibilities, and again, but that's up to me to ask and to put that together, which takes more time, and et cetera, everything else. But I think that's definitely a place that we could start to make it easier for me. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all of that.
It is so frustrating how women are so restricted in all parts of their life because of their domestic responsibilities. And it's even more frustrating how men can tend to make this worse for them by not being able to watch their own children or keep track of their practices or even just do their own dishes sometimes. A term that was coined by the sociologist Arlie Hochschild, second shift, really comes into play here. Second shift refers to when women come home from a full day of paid work to another shift of unpaid domestic labor and care work. Imagine the difference in gendered quality leisure time if women and men split all domestic labor and care work fairly. Women would not only have more time to climb professionally in their careers, but they would have more time to do more simple things that bring them joy, like exercise or read a book. If women were not responsible for most of the world's unpaid labor, we would have so many more women in powerful positions. Children could grow up looking up to strong, powerful men and women. In 2020, women made up only 5% of the CEOs appointed globally. Furthermore, despite the slow rise of women in power in the United States, only about 40% of women aspire to become CEOs, compared to about 60% of men. Further investigations on this have shown that the lack of aspiration from women for such prestigious positions in the professional field are most likely due to the fact that they have too many familial obligations, or they aspire to have a family and know that they will have to put that before anything else someday. However, majority of men do not feel this way about family obligations at all. The majority of men actually expect their woman in their life to become the primary child care provider despite if she has a career of her own or not. Men need to change their attitudes and their actions. There is no reason that men and women today cannot split the domestic obligations. They should have equal chances at climbing in their careers and equal leisure time. Men need to stop acting incompetent when it comes to unpaid labor at home. They need to appreciate how much women already do every single day and just try to even the playing field. Thank you guys for listening, and remember, the next time you see an act of weaponized incompetence, whether it's from your boyfriend, husband, father, brother, whoever, just stand up for equitable time and unpaid labor obligations. Women have no reason to be responsible for most of the world's unpaid labor anymore. Gender equality is not attainable across all paradigms of society until it is first attained at the home level.